If we start from the very small, E.F. Schumacher said, we also start from the very beautiful. And our panelists this morning know well that in order to build a new economy, we must start small. We must start from the elements themselves, start with the soil and the seeds, and from the appreciation of the interplay of all the elements in each ecosystem. There's a quote that I quite like that is from Rumi, and it says, "The heart eats a particular food from every companion, and the heart receives a particular nourishment from every single piece of knowledge." We know that all food comes from the earth, though we often forget it, and we all eat. Through the act of eating, we come into daily communion with the earth's gifts. Through the act of eating, we all directly collaborate with and impact the earth resources that she offers us for our sustenance. And so eating, therefore, is a most important and sacred of human actions. Food is many things at once, a mode of discourse, an object of knowledge, and the very staff of life. Through this understanding of food and the earth, we begin to see the natural relationship of gastronomy to ecology. Our food does not come from nothing or nowhere. It is the result of many physical and human elements coming together. So, to my mind, we must increase concerted efforts to record and preserve, revitalize the ways of relationship with the soil, with the animals, the waters, and the agricultural and kitchen instruments that together comprise our food cultures, and therefore our food economies. As we do so, we can reinstate these elemental ecological principles as the pillars of our food culture, and we can embark on a process of revitalizing our human senses towards quality and integrity, and towards vital, nutrient-dense foods. We need to stop talking about sustainability and start knowing what it tastes like. We need to recommit to the responsibility of stewardship of the earth and to the rediscovery of our senses. Last weekend I was at Slow Living Summit, and someone asked me to describe the shape of the new economy. And when they did, I got a little flustered at first, but then what came to mind was the shape of a seed. And so I've decided that the shape of the new economy is decidedly round. The new economy is circular rather than linear. It's regenerative rather than extractive. It's nourishing rather than depleting. And it's delicious rather than bland. The spherical circles of life are the very subject matter of these panelists' work. They harvest food, but moreover, they also exemplify the main theme of this gathering, that we must harvest ideas from the big think and give them boots on the ground. From their various perspectives, they will present ideas, tools, and pieces of practical action for the new farm economy. I'll let them each introduce themselves and their work, but I would like to start with Elizabeth Henderson. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I've been farming since 1979, and I came to farming to be an organic farmer from a totally different background. I had to choose a different way of life because academia seemed to be a dead end to me. So I moved to this farm in western Massachusetts. Next slide. It was a small farm. My goal at that time was to be a homesteader, to grow food for myself and my family. This is Unadilla Farm in Gill, Massachusetts. And here I learned the trade of organic farming. We grew in raised beds. And I got to know Wally and Juanita Nelson, who were people who really inspired me. They were the most consistent human beings that I ever met, leaders in organic agriculture and in the movement to resist militarism by not paying taxes, living in a way that you were under the radar screen. And that is what I've tried to do in most of my life. So this was the house that we built, a solar house. And this is what I looked like when I was a young farmer, like the farmers that Severine is trying to organize. But time goes by, and I moved to Rose Valley Farm. And at this time, I was a friend of Robin Van En by then, and I heard about what her ideas of community-supported agriculture. And our farm was located way out in Wayne County, not near any farmer's market that we could sell at. And it was quite obvious, even in the late 80s, that small organic farms would meet the same fate as conventional vegetable farms of being undersold by the major imports from California and other parts of the world. So we decided to create a community-supported agriculture project with people in the city of Rochester. And what we formed was a cooperative where everybody participated. So members would drive an entire hour out to the farm 3 times a season to help in the work at the farm. And these are a few wonderful photos that were taken by Marilyn Anderson, who is a photographer and an artist who's been a member of the CSA from the very beginning, is still a member to this day. And then things didn't work out at Rose Valley, so I moved 12 miles farther west to start Peacework Farm, and this is the farm where I am farming to this day, except that I have built in a succession, and what we've created is something that will be passed down. So I'm able to be here while my younger partners are doing most of the work. This is an aerial view, and as you fly over the United States, where you see patches like this that are not vast monocrops, you will know that these are the little organic farms. We're now perhaps 4% of the farms in the United States, but we have a very long way to go. And were all of the farms to convert to organic, that would make a major step forward to reducing the carbon in the atmosphere, because we are stocking carbon all of the time in the soil by using cover crops, using compost, and building the soil instead of using fertilizers that are the largest source of energy use in agriculture. So, at this farm, we worked with the farm owner, Doug Cry, who unfortunately passed away. And when he died, instead of us buying the farm ourselves, we worked with the Genesee Land Trust and formed a Preserve Peacework campaign to raise the money. And it turned out the money it flowed in from all of the members of our CSA, the Genesee Valley Organic CSA, within 14 months, contributed enough money to the Genesee Land Trust to purchase the farm, which the Land Trust then leased back to our farm, to Peacework Farm. So here we're signing all the papers. It took 4 hours to sign all the different things. These are very complicated interactions, but they're very, very important. So these are the members of our core group who sign up other members. The CSA is administrated by this core group that does all of the distribution. Everything, once the food leaves the farm, it is in the hands of the core group, and they have say over it. The way we've structured it is the core group is an unincorporated association which contracts with the farm for all of the shares, and then the farm is totally in charge of the production. So it's a way of the members recognizing the expertise and the hard work of us farmers and leaving those decisions to us, not intervening in them at all, but helping us by doing administrative tasks. It was a member of our CSA who said 10 years ago that we needed a website, and I laughed. And why would you need a website to sell local vegetables locally? Well, he was right. And it was members of our CSA who actually drove out to the farm, brought me a computer, and taught me how to use it. So now the Genesee Land Trust owns the farm. We lease it. We distribute most of the food. The distribution takes place at the Genesee Co-op, the Abundance Co-op in Rochester. And that way we have cooperation among cooperatives where members of RCSA can do their other shopping at the co-op, and the co-op gets very good evenings of business when all of our members are coming to buy at the store. So I was able to find a way through the CSA to get a fair price that covered our production costs and allowed my partners, Greg and Amy and me, to get a living wage. Our budget was based on us establishing each year what we needed to live on. And the three of us, I must tell you, are tax resistors. We didn't want a high standard of living because we didn't want to have to pay a lot of taxes to maintain the military power of the United States. So we have kept our earnings low, and whereas I could have made a lot more money either by doing other work in the wintertime or other things, I've devoted all of my extra time to building the movement for organic agriculture. But this chart is a chart that I got from USDA, from their Economic Research Service. And it's a little hard to read, but the green down at the bottom is the household income of farms on an average in this country. And as you see, that barely reaches $15,000. So most farms are not earning from their farm earnings enough to have anything like a living wage. And the rest of their income comes from off-farm sources. The year I was born, in 1943, there were over 6 million farms in this country. Today, there are barely 2 million. And as it was mentioned last night, the number reached its lowest about 5 years ago. And the work that we've all been doing in Buy Local and building the organic movement has changed that. So now the number of farms is once again increasing. But we still have a long way to go to get back to the 6 million farms that existed when I came into the world. So I think it's really important to understand this, that at this time, the price that you all are paying for your food does not cover the cost of production on most farms. So most of us who are doing organic farming, it's like entering a convent. You sign vows of poverty. And for many of us, that's okay, because we want to live lower on the food, the food chain. But if we're trying to build a sustainable economy and the new economics, that is just not acceptable. Could I have the next slide? In the whole food system, something like just under 20% of all of the workers in this country do food-related work, either on farms, in processing, in restaurants, food services, distribution, warehousing, all of those different things. And a really significant portion of the people who work in the food system are on public assistance of some kind because the wages are so low. Next slide. This shows you the ethnicity by wage segment in the different parts of our economy. And as you can see, people who are Black and Latino and Asian and indigenous people especially are making way less wages than white people. Next slide. And this is particularly true in the food system. There are two studies that have just come out. One that was released this week, The Hands That Feed Us, from the Food Chain Workers Alliance, and you can get this study from their website. And the other one is The Color of Food, and this is from The Color of Food. So it shows you who the food workers are by race. Next slide. And this shows you the race and gender gap, that the women of color are earning far less than the men. And one more slide. The managers are white men. The workers are men and women of color. And there are, of course, some white workers in on farms and in all of this, but the percentage of white males having those leading jobs is really significant. So I think it's just important when we're thinking about the new economy to keep this in mind. Could I have the last slide? Because if we want to build a cooperative economy, we are going to have to make major, major changes. Our food system is in a very, very deep hole. And I have been working on the Agricultural Justice Project, where we've created standards for a food system that would have high standards, where people would have decent conflict resolution, where they would have the right to organize. Do you know that farm workers do not have the recognized right to organize under the National Labor Relations Act? They are excluded from the protection to associate in any way. They're not protected. So we need to change those laws. 60 to 70% of the farm workers in this country are undocumented. Migrants from other countries who have been forced by our so-called free trade agreements to come here as economic refugees, and they are the ones doing the hard work to bring the food to our tables. So our new food system will have to transform the immigration system. We will have to transform the ownership of the land. From the vast holdings, we will have to redistribute that land and make many small farms that cooperate in many different ways. And I don't know how we're going to do that, whether we chop it up into little private pieces or whether we declare some kind of land trust by county, by state, by region, and then base land usage by the old usufruct, where you get to use a piece of land as long as you are really using it productively. And when you can't anymore, then someone else takes over. I'm not sure what the right answer is, but it has to be different. And it will mean that we all have to change our diets too, because we need to eat what we can grow where we are. And we live in a forest region, so we need to eat a lot more perennial foods, nuts, tree fruits, bush fruits, and fewer grains and vegetables and much less meat. There is a place for some animals. They're very important in the fertility on an organic or biodynamic farm. But unless we change what we're willing to eat, we will not be able to get to the new economy in agriculture. So I guess I will leave it there and turn it over to the next generation of farmers.
I'm Severine, and I woke up this morning at 6 because I had to milk the cow before I got here, and we got 90 goslings, but it's the first one that first comes, the other one first. That's me. You can't see, but I'm naked. So my job on this panel is to talk about the Young Farmers Movement, and then to impress you with our momentum and excitement, but then problematize for you the barriers that we face in actualizing on our golden vision for the future. And then to conclude by not depressing you, and hope that you will consider joining us and supporting us and becoming part of our team, because we would feed you. So that's the basic logical thrust going on. Okay, so here we are, and then we go to the next one. Okay. And then it's going to go fast because I have a lot of pictures because we're doing, this is like media. So here we are. What are we doing? We're farming. You can keep going, just like chick, chick. So we're farming because we like plants and we like animals. We like being outside. We like to have a sense of purpose. And the way that we have chosen to exert our lives is not by participating in the laser beam robot economy, but instead by farming. And you'll notice there's a lot of us who are women in this movement. In fact, the fastest growing demographic in Vermont agriculture is young women under 25. And we are focusing on direct markets. So we're growing plants and animals. We're butchering meat. Those are my first 2 pigs. We're growing vegetables. We're selling them directly. We understand that the global economy, the agricultural economy, is precarious. GMO corn in this region is what you see, and low-quality hay, that is what the agricultural policies would dictate. That's not the program that we're on, those of us who are in the young farming. Here we had, this is the pre-cover, we had revolution and they changed it to movement, but whatever. You can keep going. So I run a nonprofit here in Hudson, New York. We produce media and events for young farmers, cultural support for those first critical 6 years of the farmer's career, when they may, in fact, face social isolation, profound poverty, the dismay of their parents. This is a Reverend Billy giving Detroit urban farmers a pep talk, Earthalluia. We do workshops, documentary film, blog, 100 radio podcast episodes of young farmers around the country. We've done 180 young farmer mixers, and most of them, that's Tim, he's single. This is, so always it's educational and celebrational. Always there's a workshop aspect, and then, here's your pig roast powered by bicycle spit. Keep going. There's music. There's food. That was in the Grange Hall in Essex. There's whiskey at night. Again, our goal is to interpret the scene, the institutional resources. So weed dating is a social phenomenon out of Maine, where you go and you weed, and then they ring a bell, and then you switch partners. So it's like, you learn, if you're going to farm with someone, then you want to know if they can weed at a commercial pace. So, it's economic bravery. So, butter with bike power. Many holiday home owners who have land, who are non-farming landowners, who are many of whom searching for partners in farming or managers who are farming. Very complicated set of negotiations, I'll get into it. Radical anyway, blah, blah, blah. This is the blog. This is the radio, et cetera. This is the movie. Our movie we screen now 526 times, completely indie distribution, and 17 times in Australia. So the Australians think that we're way ahead. But we're not. So obviously young farmers are using new media and the internet to find information. We have the advantage now of these new formats for collaboration, and we are, ambitious young people. This is Farm Hack, which is in-person meetings of engineers and farmers to work on collaborative tool design that's appropriate for small and diversified farming. So we collaborate in person in these groups regionally. We've had now 6 of them. This weekend there's one in Iowa, last week in Essex. This is the website, which is an online open source platform. It's, again, wiki and forum based, which are the technologies that we're all familiar with from software development. Because we profit from selling the food locally, sharing the technology nationally doesn't hurt, helps win. Win-win, win-win. So anyway. New media, blah, blah, blah. This is a mapping project of young farmers and their problems. And this is the National Young Farmers Coalition, which is our political arm. Now in its 3rd year, we have written our first piece of legislation called the Beginning Farmer and Rancher Opportunity Act, which unfortunately just got slammed. But you can call in urgently this weekend because we are in this moment of trying to preserve a few amendments which would negate most of the terribleness. No, the minority of the terribleness. Okay, so we went through the happy phenomena. Everyone believes that there's a happy phenomena. Okay, it's nice, it looks nice, it sounds nice. It is nice, but let me tell you something, it's also really hard. And the cookie crumbles, not usually on our side of the equation. So here are some of our troubles. Are you ready? So here we go. So here we are, we're white kids, we're educated, a lot of us. We're willing to be economically brave. and get involved in entrepreneurship and small business and a highly regulated perishable product, refrigeration necessary, inadequate processing context. And, so we're dealing with these kind of relic infrastructures. So it's not very, so here you go. For instance, what do we need? We need processing, we need slaughter facilities, we need distribution, all these things that you guys are probably familiar with if you go to these kinds of conferences. So this is the mesh that we're dealing with, and this is the capitalization, this is the janky infrastructure that we're dealing with. It's hard, you can't really see. Maybe I'll just talk. Maybe just go and I'll talk and I won't look. But basically, we're small business people, and we're creating a successional dynamic in our lives. And, the thing to keep in mind is what starts very small in the E.F. Schumacher beautiful world actually can grow quite large. So maybe we'll skip to case study modality. For instance, in the Adirondacks, there's a farm called Essex Farm. They are doing, in a 20-minute growing season, a full year diet. They're doing horsepower. They have 4 teams of horses, and they're in the most depressed, the first or the second most depressed county of New York. It's either the first or the second. Yeah. And so there you are. There's no economy. There's no growing season. You're not really that into tractors. Okay, let's do it. Let's make it work. So they have managed through the force of their will and very good community relations to attract seriously ambitious young people there. There are now 6 young farmer farms. Everyone comes to Essex, gets married, starts another farm. And they're working together. People don't compete that much with each other. There's amazing collaboration. And the best and the brightest are arriving daily. So this is supposed to say access to land, access to capital. These are the key issues that we face. Obviously, the big banks do not lend to farmers. And we recently had a victory through the Young Farmers Coalition around access to microcredit. And so basically the thing was they changed it from a rural youth loan for like $10,000 to buy some steers that you then raise up on your uncle's land, sell at an FFA auction, and then buy a car, go to college, and never come back, to $30,000 loan is the max instead of only 10, and 35 is the maximum age. So we're talking at the beginning, the very beginning of your career. We're talking tractors, we're talking walk-in coolers, we're talking wash stations, early capitalization. So that was a minor victory, and is a result of, again, the Young Farmers Coalition working with FSA and articulating really clearly our need for the right size credit option. And again, this is what you find when you look around this group of people. America is large, and the skill set that we are bringing to this problem starts to get really complicated. And so you, as a result, have, powerful muscles, but also like ninja skill set in terms of landlord negotiation, conservation easement, boards of trustees of nonprofits, in terms of holistic management, rotational grazing, inadequate infrastructure, no forklifts, on leased land. I had a nice list of other terrible things that we were facing. Experimental formats in terms of cooperative formation in order to buy, work with free land trust and the nice, willing, aging, retiring landowner, and then creating a worker-owned co-op to lead, So again, unglamorous, not hard, not easy, not boring. And again, many different formats for approaching these problems. And some of the things that we've been looking at lately have to do with this credit issue. And we talked to the Kiva people, and we're now making these $5,000 experimental loans, which are 0%. Because pretty much people are scared about how unprofitable we are. Or no, how slowly we become how little profitable. And so that's something that I'm I'm working on right now is that capital issue. And if you have insight, we have a working group in California in January for the Young Farmers Fund. So come talk to me about it. But again, with these new formats of collaboration, the Young Farmers Coalition, these regional Young Farmers Coalitions, through Farm Hack, through the Crop Mob format, which is basically like a rave. It's like a barn raising, but over the internet. So, you show up 60 people, we, put up your barn. Kind of an operation. There's one in Michigan, and it's called Selma, and they raised $250,000 by opening up their house for breakfast one day a week and charging people $12 for breakfast. And then all of that money that they raised goes to make zero interest loans to farmers to build greenhouses, and then the people who ate the breakfast build the greenhouses, hothouses. So anyway, here we are. This is our land. This is where we're starting, and I want to make sure you know that we are pretty into this game, and there's more and more. I mean, like, you think that there's leadership on the M30. There's like 10 25-year-olds for every one of me. And I'm hoping that we keep the telescope going because, Ag Census right now says that young farmers under the age of 35 are only 6%. So average age of the American farmer is 57. There are more prisoners in America than farmers. We have 400 million acres of land that is projected to pass from one hand into Monsanto in the next 20 years. We need a lot more brains, bodies, and businesses in American agriculture, and frankly, what you got. So nurturing this community, and particularly this first 6 years of small business upstart, that we can form these direct relationships of commerce, and then there's a butcher, and then there's a baker, and then there's a candlesmith maker, or whatever the hell. That's kind of really how it happens. And Lindsay and Ben and I, we started the National Young Farmers Coalition 3 years ago. 3 years before that, they were farming a half of a quarter of it. They were just farming in their backyard in Brooklyn. They own their own land. They have a new baby. So they signed their ownership. They own their land. They feed 600 families. They have 5 CSA delivery spots, 25 acres of vegetables. So that's in the course of 6 years. Also, they started a national coalition and had a baby. So, anyway, there's a lot to do, but we're here. The end.
Severine reminds me of a quote. I think I either read it in Woody's book or heard him say it, and I think it was attributed to Stuart Brand, that there are 5 speeds to the economy, and the higher speed sort of tugs the lower speed along, and maybe the job of the lower speed is to slow the higher one down a bit, and I feel sufficiently tugged right now. Thank you very much. Whoa. So ours is a little bit of a longer story. Hawthorne Valley Association has been in Hudson Valley in Harlemville, New York, about 35, 40 minutes north of here for the last 40 years. July 30th will be the 40th anniversary. Our mission is social and cultural renewal through the integration of education, agriculture, and the arts. So I figure that's job security for at least a while, because I think we have a while to go on that one. We are farming on a 400-acre biodynamic farm. We have a dairy herd. We have the cows as the heart of the farm because they produce the fertility for the land. They also give us this wonderful little byproduct called milk, which then we process in our dairy processing center, and we sell raw milk in our store on the farm and make hard cheeses, soft cheeses, and yogurts, most of which we self-distribute. We have about 14 acres of vegetables under cultivation, 4 CSA groups, several green market runs to Union Square, Inwood, now Columbia, Hudson, and Troy. We have an on-site organic bakery. We have a lacto-fermented vegetable processing kitchen, and we have our full-line organic grocery store on the farm that allows us to self-distribute most of our products and also be a place for a lot of the other farms and value adders in our region to have an outlet. But we're also a cultural institution, and so we have a lot of education going on. And we started 40 years ago trying to look at how to deal with this transitioning aspect of farms and make it more like the farm is actually a public resource and the next competent people come along and work it. And we also wanted to work with connecting children back to the landscape and back to their sources of food. As the future stewards of the land, it felt like they might actually need to have a connection to that land in order to ask them to later on be responsible for it. So for the last 40 years, we've been bringing children from urban centers as classes onto the farm. They live in the main house for 1 week, and they do agricultural chores and have ecological opportunities. And about 600 children a year come through that program. We also have a nursery through grade 12 Waldorf school on the farm, which is just an independent day school, not so much residential. We have a farm learning center that's doing farmer training. We have 6 apprentices at least every year. This year, I think we're up to 10 because 4 of them decided to stay on for a second year. We have biodynamic intensive. We have farm beginnings, which is giving business training to the farmers, aspiring farmers, transitioning farmers. We have something called Farmscape Ecology Program, which has 3 scientists in residence on the farm looking at the intersection of agriculture and ecology and our human interaction there, and how do we know that we're actually having the most fruitful partnership for all concerned. We have some research into social and economic forms. We have some adult education, a small publishing press, a peer-led youth training group, and a lot of arts initiatives that are also looking at the role of art, or the relationship between art and money, and along with trying to get people to think about decommodifying the land, we'd like to also decommodify art and culture as a way of really freeing it up, because this is where new thinking comes, and if anything is required in these times, it's new thinking. So that's kind of, I hope I didn't miss anything. I think that's pretty much Hawthorne Valley right now. We are hoping to expand our capacity to serve the rest of the farming community. We have a farmers research circle through Farmscape Ecology Program, and we have as many as 50 farmers come to these meetings, and the research is all farmer driven. It's their questions, we research, and then we bring back at least a deepening of the question, if not something that begins to point to a solution. And we really hope to be a collaborative hub. We have lots of partners here in the Hudson Valley and beyond, and really think that networking and collaboration is the only way forward. And so we hope to be able to strengthen that role. We hope that our processing centers can be centers that can be used and by other farms and encourage others to get into farming. We're looking at expanding our store a little bit with a focus more on fresh, and then putting our dairy processing center on one end, the bakery is already on the other end, and the deli and eating areas in the middle, so you would have production, commerce, and fun all in one center. And then we would free up the building that currently is dairy processing to expand our vegetable processing and create a staging ground for the green markets and for hopefully helping with regional distribution with our other farming partners. And we're trying to do all this now in the context of moving the whole campus, and in fact the whole hamlet of Harlemville, towards zero net energy, zero net water. And I have to rush home right after this for our 12th grade graduation, and Dr. John Todd is our commencement speaker, and he's one of the folks on the team that's helping us look at this question. So it's kind of really awesome to at least imagine it. And I would say that brings me kind of to my last my inner question, or my big question, and that is, in all of this activity and in all of the busyness of our lives and in the sense of urgency that we all rightly feel, especially after listening to Bill last night, where do we find the sufficient time to just slow down for a moment and to pause and reflect on our actions and where it is that we would like to go? And this is very much at the heart of Hawthorne Valley's work, and I feel like we're being asked to grow outwardly, and I'm trying to understand how can we grow inwardly. As we tend and steward the outer landscape, it feels like we need to find the capacities to tend and steward our inner landscape and to support each other in that work. And so that's very much the question that I come here with and will leave here with, and I'll be happy to talk to any of you about that. And I also invite all of you wholeheartedly to come a little north tomorrow after this is over, if you like. I would be very happy to take any of you on a tour of Hawthorne Valley. It is like, I think, 40 minutes north of here. So you're all most welcome. Please do come.
We probably have time for one or two questions.
Well, I guess what I would say to that is that capitalism may apply in some sectors of the world, but it has totally failed in the food system in this country. And farmers like ourselves are pioneers in a way of life that I think everybody will need to adopt. We eat what we grow, what we share with our neighbors, and it's a very rich life. It's not getting poorer, it's simply changing your priorities. And believe me, when you're out weeding carrots, you have time to reflect. I was able to write a book, Sharing the Harvest, A Citizen's Guide to Community-Supported Agriculture, because I had a lot of time to think while I was doing some of the simple tasks that are involved in farming. But I have to tell you that had I had a little more money, I would have hired a few more people, and I could have spent fewer hours, and it would still have been very productive, and I might have written 3 books instead.
My big beef with the USDA right now is Secretary Vilsack says we need 100,000 young farmers. That's his goal. He says it all the time. He looks good saying it. Then they cut our program, Beginning Farmer and Rancher Development Program, in half. Okay, how can we win like that? Organic is a different issue, but that's her issue.
Organic certification was needed because there was a lot of fraud in the marketplace. The organic premium, paying more for organic food, started because there were people who wanted to eat our food and knew that for our farms to survive, we had to be paid better than what the conventional market was paying for farms. And then, of course, there are people who are exploiting that. So the big supermarkets mark up the organic food more than the conventional food. And that's part of where the high price comes from. When USDA took over organic certification, they did not include the fairness aspect of organic and biodynamic that has always been there, that it needs to bring out the full potential of the people involved in the food system. USDA said that is not in our purview. That's the Department of Labor or something. So that's why I've been working on the Agricultural Justice Project, to bring fairness into the food system and to be an additional label, Food Justice Certified. But there are many other ways to work towards that. There's nothing wrong with the USDA standards. The problems that that program has is the usual problems of manufacturers and big business looking for a profit center, and organic is one of them. So particularly in processing, there's continual pressure to add this extra ingredient that we just have to have in order to sell our organic macaroni and cheese. We need this dye so that it will be orange instead of white. It's relentless pressure, but the basic standards for farming is fine. It's the same standards.
Unfortunately, we have to wrap up, but thank you to all of our panelists, and I urge you to leave this workshop thinking that food is not just one of the wedges into the new economy, it's the foundation of the new economy. So thank you.